and could not have planned on it. When I had my moment of crisis, and I wish there was one defining moment that I could tell you about in great detail that you would all enjoy. Instead, it's 25 years of many, many moments. But there's one particular moment that I can relate to. And when I had that moment, I didn't know that any of you existed. I didn't know that there were meetings to go to. I didn't know that there were websites that I could visit. I didn't know there were people who would care. All I saw before me when I began to allow myself to accept my atheism, all I saw was this void. All I saw was this life completely drained of all color and all purpose. You'll have to pardon me tonight because I feel a little emotional. I know it's going to sound like I'm preaching, but I promise I'm not. That's just how I talk after 25 years of being in Southwest Louisiana and behind countless pulpits. I could not, for the life of me, understand what life would be like outside of the pulpit. I'm a little emotional tonight. That's where I was about to go, because even though it's not behind the podium, it's back in a sanctuary. And it may not be proper etiquette within our movement for me to tell you the few things that I'm about to tell you, but you need to know in order to understand me, and thus understand the story, and thus understand all the people that I represent, and thus the reason why I'm here tonight, and thus the reason that you fought the weather to come hear what I have to say. You need to know a few things about me, and what you need to know is that I love sanctuaries. I love churches. And I love the arrangements of the seats, and I love where the choir sits and where the musicians play. I love the artwork. I love the scenery. I love the sense of home that I feel. When I'm in a sanctuary, any sanctuary, anywhere on the planet, it of course causes me to relate back in memory to sanctuaries of my childhood and of my adult ministry. And that is nostalgic for me, and it takes me in my heart and in, I know, heart and mind, two different, I know, just drop it for a moment and let me be Southern, right? But it allows me to go back in my heart. It allows me to reconnect with my history. It allows me to reconnect with my family. There are people that I now know that I may never see again. We're also a little agnostic about these things. We don't know for sure. Maybe the next Big Bang will unfold a universe where I get to see all these people again. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to see these people again. But when I walk into the sanctuary and I feel that connection, it brings those people, it brings them back to me. And it reconnects me with relationships and experiences. Not all of them were pleasurable by any means. If you have any doubt, make sure you buy my book at the end of June, Hope After Faith. It'll be coming out bookstores everywhere. Plug, plug, plug. But I love churches. And I love sanctuaries. And I love church services. And I love church music. Everything about that is me, and I am it. Right now, on my phone, if you had the stomach to test me, there would be some church music. And as I'm driving across the country, ever so often I'll go far enough down through my music list that I'll hit Jimmy Swaggart. Does anybody here know who Jimmy Swaggart is? Oh, I love you, I love you. You probably know about him for all the wrong reasons. But I've got good memories about Jimmy Swaggart. And I've got good memories related to my family about Jimmy Swaggart and our history. And Jimmy Swaggart belonged to the Assemblies of God, and how the Assemblies of God denomination ties into my family history. As a matter of fact, this particular combination of DNA would not exist had my grandfather, from one particular religious vein of Christianity, had that family not been forced out of Mississippi into Louisiana, and at around the same time, my grandmother, her mom and dad, were tenant farmers, and they followed a traveling evangelist to Louisiana. And so these two different religiously motivated families came together in Louisiana so that they could have sex. This is a plug for Dr. Delray's book. So that they could have sex, so that they could create my mother, who could then have sex, who could create me, so that I could live the last several months without sex. Thank you very much. Children in the audience, of course. Anytime I stretch myself, there's always children in the audience. No good deed goes unpunished. And so, religion, it plays into my history. It's in almost every photograph. It's in almost every memory. And so, as I begin to get closer and closer to the edge, I will admit to you that I left Christianity before I left the ministry. It was easier for me to envision a life without Christian, especially fundamentalistic doctrine. It was easier for me to entertain the idea of no longer being a Christian, but I could not fathom the idea of no longer being a minister. Because I didn't know what that world would look like. I didn't know where I would find home again. To me, to move out from the ministry was to live a life without purpose, to live a life without meaning, to live a life without self-expression. And whether the rest of the secular movement wants to acknowledge it or not, this sanctuary, along with so many others across this beautiful planet, is an expression of individuals who have put their hearts out and have expressed their own individuality. Church and religion is not always some type of atomic experience where people are surrendering their identity. It's also a place of self-expression. Obviously, these quilts are an example of someone's creativity and self-expression. They poured themselves into every thread, expressing themselves. And so, as I was getting closer and closer to the end of Christianity, our church was growing. And it was in this little bitty Episcopalian chapel. We weren't Episcopalians. The Episcopalian congregation had literally, not figuratively, literally died off. And the building was just sitting there vacant. And it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. This white wood frame, little wedding chapel setting on piers with a little bell tower and all of the stained glass. And when you walked in, every single surface was cypress wood. Dark stained. It was gorgeous. It was like you had walked back into the womb of creation. It was beautiful. But we were outgrowing it. And I thought, how can we take what I feel when we walk into this little Episcopalian chapel, 125 years old, when we build a new building, how can I make it feel the same way? And why would I even want to? The reason that I would want to make the new building feel the same way as the old building is the same reason that I could give up Christianity before I could give up the ministry. One singular reason. Because when we walked into that old sanctuary, it felt as if this unseen community, this body of relationships, these arms of history and significance, compassion, caring, would instantly wrap their arms around you. And we would feel a sense of community. And we begin to draw buildings trying to physically, structurally duplicate that sense of community. Where when a person walked in, they felt like someone was wrapping their arms around them. That's the same reason that I couldn't leave the ministry. Because it was about community. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't know of anyone who came to Christ after doing calculus. I know it's extremely interesting to prove on paper that all the animals on planet Earth would not fit in the ark. I know that's interesting, and it's fun to do. And I've done it, and I love all the YouTube videos. But if you think that that's the reason why people are walking into those arms, then you're missing it altogether. Because that's not why people surrender pieces of their identity. That's not why people join into religions. That's not why people get up on Sunday mornings and come to service. They come for those arms. And I could not imagine life without those arms, without those relationships. I was fortunate. I was fortunate in the fact that my conscience was so strong and so clear that I had to make the move without knowing that there was somewhere to move to. I had to jump without knowing there was something to land on. But my message to you tonight and to the secular movement in general is, not everyone is that lucky. In some ways, I was pushed out. My great aunt, we've always called her an aunt. She's really like a third or fourth cousin. She's my grandmother's first cousin. Oddly enough, her name is Grace. Not something she showed me much of. I'm glad her name wasn't asked. But Aunt Grace went out of her way to tell all of our family what she had seen on my Facebook page. Little changes that I'd made after attending the Texas Free Thought Convention in Houston, Texas in October of 2011. I had met and spent time with Professor Dawkins. I witnessed Christopher Hitchens' last public speech. I had met all these beautiful people and began to realize that there are other sets of arms. There wasn't just one set, but there were other sets of arms. And so when I went back home, I changed my Facebook page to reflect those things, not in big ways, not in ugly ways. I didn't put any satanic symbols. I didn't put any, odd postings of Jesus in weird positions or anything like some people seem to enjoy. Instead, I just changed my religious status to secular humanist. And I liked a couple of pages. Things like Carl Sagan, and Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens, and Samuel Harris, and Daniel Dennett, and every horseman that I could find. And that was enough. So as much as I would like to stand here and next Sunday, a quarter of those are still preaching. A quarter of those are still trying to figure out how they're going to get out of those arms and why they should. It seems so obvious to all of us who are out and now embraced by other arms. We should scold these people. We should criticize these people. And we should say to them, just be true to yourself and stop telling lies and stop propagating this religious machine that is doing so much damage. Stop being a liar. It's simple. Just next Sunday, walk up and tell the congregation what you really believe. It's simple. But they have spouses. And some of those spouses are on the health insurance that's supplied by the church. Some of those spouses will truly not live without the medication. They have children that are in college. They have mortgages just like everyone else to pay. They have responsibilities. And almost as challenging as what I just listed, these same people, they don't really yet understand that there are other arms. And so when they look out at the congregation, just like when I looked out at the congregation, they don't see tithe payers and they don't see audience attendees. They see moms and dads that they've prayed with. They see children that they've counseled. They see brothers and sisters that they feel as close to as their own loved ones. They see people that have been trusting them to lead them into a better form of community. And then what do they do now? Suddenly rip them away from what they've done? Well, the answer is yes. Yes, that is. That is exactly what they should do. But what they should do and what they can do are two different things. So I present you with this challenge. Right? You know what preachers are supposed to do? Get up and challenge the audience. Solve the community problem. Solve the community problem that exists within the secular movement. Solve it. You be the ones to solve it. You step up, you figure it out. You figure out how to be competitive with the church world in community. And I know, even as I say those words, I feel a little bit of indignation towards those words myself. Like, well, we shouldn't have to match anybody's anything. If they'll just be honest, if they'll just use their brains, if they'll just read, if they'll just even watch a stinking YouTube video, they'll figure out there's nothing to it. But it's so much bigger than that. What I had to accept over the last year was that I'm not the answer guy. And if there was a God to wish to, I would wish that I was the answer guy. I would wish to God that I was the answer guy. Because that's what my heart always told me I was supposed to do, was I was supposed to internalize your problem and as the minister, find the answer for it, and then translate that back to you in a physical way that would make an improvement in your life. That was my job. That's what I was being paid to do. And I wish that I could be the answer guy, and I could tell you, if you'll just post a YouTube video or a blog posting saying this, this, and this, you'll get every preacher out of Christianity. If you'll just do this, this, and this, then you'll empty the churches. If you just do this, this, and this, then religion will come to an end. But I'm not the answer guy. Actually, I'm here to not express anything that's simple at all. Instead, I'm here to express the complexity of real life. Real life is not a YouTube video. Real life is not one single book, not even my book. Real life is complicated. And all across this country, I'm challenging groups like yours to step up to this very complicated issue and find a way to be those arms for the people who are on the fence, or to be those arms for the people who feel like that they're lost without any religious direction anymore. Because if you begin to be those arms, much like they say in the movies, if you build it, they will come. Now this is usually where I say, can I get a Darwin? It's just really that complicated. This one step too far. I started off as a hardcore, as we called, clothesline Pentecostal preacher at age 17. No facial hair, long sleeves. The women had to wear dresses. They could not cut their hair. No makeup, no jewelry. I've never owned a wedding band. I've been married 23 years next month, maybe. No television, no movies. Matter of fact, I got in trouble once for chewing bubble gum. Because it's foolishness. Right? What good could it possibly do God for you to be wasting your energy chewing bubble gum? No secular music. Nothing of the world. That's how I started out. Over time, I moved into what I thought was more progressive Christianity, which were charismatics. It was people who still believed in divine healing, still believed in speaking in other tongues, still believed in all of the mysticism, but they could